Thank you, Michael. And hello, everyone. We're going to be continuing the conversation about the cloud for the next few minutes by focusing it on how the cloud can bring innovation to a really important franchise for TV stations, the weather. I'm here with Jerry Martz, Senior Account Executive and Meteorologist at the Weather Company. Welcome, Jerry.
Hey, Kathy, how are you today?
Good, it's great to see you.
Likewise.
So, Jerry,
likewise.
Earlier this year, TV News Check and the Weather Company produced a webinar about using the cloud to optimize weather workflows and storytelling. We got a huge number of really specific questions from engineers who were participating in that webinar. So clearly, there's a significant interest in the TV station group community about migrating some operations to the cloud. The Weather Company recently introduced a new solution called Max Cloud. From what I understand, it does two important things. First, it enables meteorologists to collaborate in ways they haven't been able to before, and in ways that are already somewhat common in the rest of the news department. And the other thing it does is it offers TV stations a strategy for gradually moving weather workflows into the cloud. So I wanted to ask you, because you are a meteorologist, about hurricane season, which we are in now, and the cloud. For broadcasters who experience disruption due to power outages, flooding, evacuations, how could a cloud workflow make a difference in an event like that?
That's a great question. And a lot has changed, especially with the weather since we've talked earlier this year in the winter, Kathy, with hurricanes and the wildfires and some of those weather disruptions, of course. A lot of stations have already been enjoying or leveraging some of that sharing or that collaboration. But when there's a disruptive event that comes along, it simply is an opportunity to take that Max Cloud technology to the next level. I like to refer to it as kind of a mutual aid. That can be sister stations that are helping stations that are in duress with their broadcast and digital. It can even go so far as to uprooting the disrupted weather team, putting them in a sister station where they could actually drive their own show as if they were in their own studio. So certainly has expanded beyond that. And really, I think some real life examples have come into play based on some of the crazy weather this summer.
You know, it's really interesting that meteorologists at sister stations can step in for a team that's really slammed with reporting on a severe weather event. And that makes me think about remote production, which is another really important issue for broadcasters. How does the cloud help with remote production?
Well, we kind of had our hand forced over the past 18 months. I mean, I'm remote, you're remote. We love meeting in person, but it simply hasn't been the case for a lot of us over the past year and a half. And stations have really blossomed when it came to creative ways to kind of distribute their work and have their folks work remotely. But when you look at it, rather than being forced, but if you have the choice to work remotely and kind of have that geo-dispersed workforce, it doesn't necessarily mean that all your resources need to be in a physical location or at a facility, excuse me. It does allow for remote production for both broadcast and for digital. And we talked about the disruptive weather and some of the fires and things of that nature, which has just been tragic over the past 6 to 8 months. And it's not too far of a stretch to broadcasters, at least in my mind, that their audience might not be able to catch them on traditional broadcast avenues or channels. So that's where digital is really important too. So if you've got your best people that are supporting some of those stations that need assistance for both broadcast and digital, they can do that from absolutely anywhere with Max Cloud.
Sounds like a really good setup. I have to ask you about ransomware attacks, which have become a huge concern, especially this year among TV station groups. How does moving mission critical workflows like the weather to the cloud affect security?
Great question. And you can imagine the trepidation in some conversations with some stations and groups like, wait, you want to move our most critical piece of our broadcast and put it in the cloud? How are you going to assure and guarantee the security of that when sometimes we have trouble doing it ourselves. So the short answer to that is the Max Cloud solution is, and always planned had been, on the IBM Cloud. And some of the other instances of IBM Cloud use with finance, with retail, with medical, that list is very long and distinguished. Not to brag, but that was really part of the plan. It wasn't a matter of convenience, although that certainly helped. It was really thinking further ahead by the folks that are designing and working on Max Cloud to know and give the assurance to the broadcasters that it's going to be rock solid and secure. And that's where the IBM Cloud comes into play. So we're really confident of that. I know sometimes that takes a bit more than us just saying that to the broadcasters, but we're happy to have a conversation and really allay some of those concerns if that's a major one for some of them.
Weather is the number one reason that audiences tune into their local news. How do TV stations plan their migration to the cloud and protect their weather brands at the same time?
A good question. And really, I think the thread to pull on there, Kathy, is migration. It's not a hard cutover. It's not a weather company or IBM forcing the hands of our partners. It's actually quite the opposite. We've got a lot of feedback. We heard, we've learned from some of our toe stubs, and we're getting better. But the key there is really a hybrid approach. And the reason for that is part of it is a limitation of this technology, part of it's an expense, but the main reason is that we want to be able to allow the stations and the groups to move at their own pace. We are obviously trying to push that envelope and stay at the tip of the technology spear with Max Cloud, but we're not making anybody do anything. As the stations and groups are comfortable and they are assured that the Max Cloud is something that's going to meet their needs and allow them to expand the way that they consider doing things within their groups, then I think that it's going to be something that hopefully people become a bit more comfortable with. It's basically at your own pace. We're partners with you. We're cognizant of that. We're not being heavy-handed about that. And we understand, of course, the mission critical nature and the sensitivity, how important weather is to you. And we wanted to walk with you, not kind of pull you along. So that's kind of the mentality behind Max Cloud and the migration from what people were traditionally used to on-prem to moving things to Max Cloud.
Great. So they can send you a timetable, negotiate it out. What are you going to move all of the Max systems to the cloud eventually?
I haven't seen the end game or the roadmap for that, Kathy, being the account manager in sales, but I do think that might be part of the plan, is to ultimately, when it makes sense for everybody, is to get Max there. But right now, we're doing it in steps, purposefully in steps and stages. A lot of the digital media and the content, and when we say publishing content, we mean broadcast and digital. That's relatively easy to handle, relatively easy to share and collaborate, and relatively easy to lock up and secure. And that's where we're dipping our toe in first. There's still, at this point in time with Max Cloud, still going to be that appliance or that component on the edge at the station. And that's where the output of Max comes from for on-air broadcasting. So we're not going to take that away, and that's actually going to help facilitate Max Cloud interaction and exchanging among stations with that little bit of hardware still at the station level.
It's an interesting challenge because you have all those heavy weather graphics,
It is.
I know we're probably running close to out of time, but I wanted to ask you a question. As a meteorologist, you have a perspective on moving weather workflows into the cloud. What do you find most interesting about it as a meteorologist when you think about weather storytelling in the cloud?
I've thought about that, and a lot of my peers and friends are still on-camera meteorologists and broadcasters, and to varying degrees, they really enjoyed being forced to work from home. It opened their eyes. It was a better quality of life for many of them, and family time. And it's something that we may see a hybrid or a blend moving forward in the future. But to answer your question, I think the neatest part about it to me is that I'm able to, if I was in a meteorologist's shoes, or a news manager or a corporate position, look at really where the bright spots are within my organization. Not every meteorologist, while they might be a great forecaster, is a great graphics person. So maybe leveraging those people that might have a little more techno savvy backbone to them, that might be good at the graphic creation and distribution, and leverage those resources without forcing them to move to a particular station, because they can do that from anywhere. So I think that's something that I found really exciting as a former on-air meteorologist, that the possibilities that means, and not just, again, for broadcast, but for digital too. We all know where the market is going, and how things are reacting and changing with respect to the eyeballs. And you've got to be everywhere all the time for everybody. And Max Cloud, I think, really will help the meteorologists do just that.
I remember, we're just getting really close to out of time. But I remember just really briefly when we did the webinar, you talked about a locker in the cloud that people can store stuff in. So if I create a great explainer about Hurricane Ida, it's in the locker and all my colleagues can get it.
Yeah, it's a secure locker. I like, that's a great visualization, right? That the cloud has these lockers in there. And that's, again, on purpose to kind of enable the folks to visualize that their content is somewhere, even though it's in the Max Cloud, and that only people that you want on your team or within your station group would have access to that locker. Sometimes it can be two-way transfer of content. Sometimes it just can be a one-way transfer. So there are some levers and controls that the managers can pull on and lock down. But it's really a great concept, Kathy, if you think about that, and how to be able to share that content with the lockers and create and distribute that content, for station groups and for individual stations, really to be able to leverage that. It's pretty exciting.
It's one of those things that the news department's already doing, and now the meteorologists will be able to do it. So we're very close to out of time, Jerry. I want to thank you, Jerry Martz, Senior Account Executive and Meteorologist at the Weather Company, for joining us today.
Thank you, Kathy.
If you want to watch the webinar that TV News Check and the Weather Company produced earlier this year about optimizing weather workflows and storytelling in the cloud, you can find that video still at TV News Check's YouTube channel in a playlist called IP, the Cloud, and TV Workflows. Next up at TV2025 is the 6th annual Station Group Leadership Panel, featuring TV News Check editor Michael Depp, interviewing the top executives of several major station groups about their take on the coming year and the business in general. Welcome, Michael.